Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International. Hello, CJ.
Hello, Alma, and good evening to everyone watching the news. Here are the headlines from around the world.
First, President Duterte will no longer pursue his planned debate with retired Supreme Court Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio on issues surrounding the disputed West Philippine Sea, according to Malacanang.
And to Indonesia, where Mount Sinabung spews ash and smoke into the sky, and locals have been advised to stay several kilometers away from the crater.
We know that
Dr. Anthony Fauci, White House Chief Medical Advisor on COVID-19, said that people who have had COVID-19 and later got vaccinated may have more protection against contagious variants.
Significantly boost the immune response.
And a virus state of emergency in Tokyo and other parts of Japan was extended today, less than 3 months before the Olympics, as India logged yet another record number of infections.
First in the country, President Duterte will no longer pursue his planned debate with retired Supreme Court Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio on issues surrounding the disputed West Philippine Sea, according to Malacanang today. The president was ready to debate with Carpio but decided to heed his cabinet men's advice to cancel his plan since it wouldn't benefit the country. That, according to presidential spokesperson Harry Roque, in an announcement aired over state-run PTV4. And the cabinet officials, Roque said, also believed it would be unfair for the president, the country's chief executive, to hold a debate with Carpio, who is now an ordinary lawyer. Let's listen in.
Nanindigan po ang mga miyembro ng gabinete na bakit papayag sa debate. Nakaupong presidente naman si Presidente Duterte at si Antonio Carpio po, Attorney Antonio Carpio, bagamat siya ay dating mahisrado, ay ordinaryong mga abogado na ngayon. Parang hindi naman po ata tabla, no, na ang Office of the President, na presidente mismo, ay harap sa isang ordinaryong mambabatas. Parang hindi po patas. At ang pangatlo at pinakaimportante ay sinabihan po ang presidente ng ating mga miyembro ng gabinete na napakahirap po na mag-participate ang presidente sa ganyang debate. Bakit po? Kasi nakaupo pa siyang presidente. At ibig sabihin, lahat po ng masasabi ng presidente doon sa debating yon ay makaka-apekto po sa mga pulisiya ng gobyerno. Hindi na po mababawi ang pwedeng sabihin ng presidente sa debating yon, bukod pa sa katotohanan na kaya nga po tayo meron tinatawag na executive privilege, no? Yung mga bagay-bagay na hindi dapat isa publiko para makagawa ng mga tamang desisyon, bagamat hindi popular na desisyon ng isang presidente. Mako-compromise po yung mga bagay-bagay na ito, yung mga impormasyon na ito, kung papayag po at ituloy ng presidente ang pagdebate kay dating Supreme Court Justice Antonio Carpio. Pero tuloy po ang debate. Ang sabi po ni Presidente, kung papayag si Antonio Carpio, tuloy po ang debate dahil importante naman na marinig yung mga ideyas, no, para ang mga taong bayan ang makagawa ng konklusyon. Ang sabi po ni Presidente, tinatalaga niya po ang inyong abang lingkod na makipagdebate kay retired Justice Antonio Carpio. At tinanggap ko naman po ang pagtatalaga ni Presidente. Sabihin lang po ng Philippine Bar Association kung kailan, saan ang debate at sisipot po tayo ron. Pero ang pagdedebatihan po malinaw. Unang-una, sino ang responsable sa pagkawala ng teritoryo ng Pilipinas? Si Presidente Duterte ba o ang ibang administrasyon? Pangalawa, tama ba ang sinasabi ni Antonio Carpio na binaliwala ni Presidente ang panalo natin doon sa Hague Tribunal? At kung gusto niya, pangatlo, tama ba po na namimigay ng teritoryo ang Presidente Duterte?
Now, in a public address delivered on Wednesday night, President Duterte sought an investigation against Carpio and former Foreign Affairs Secretary Albert Del Rosario due to their supposed role in the Philippines' failure to defend its sovereign rights over Scarborough Shoal. President Duterte also chided former Justices Carpio and Del Rosario for their alleged involvement in the withdrawal of Philippine vessels from Scarborough Shoal during the 2012 standoff with China. In a statement on Thursday, Del Rosario said it was national tragedy that President Duterte is taking the side of China. And piqued by this latest remark, Secretary Roque told the former top diplomat to stop spreading lies against the president. Roque said he's willing to hold a debate to dispute their allegations against the president and his administration when it comes to the West Philippine Sea issue.
The Department of National Defense Secretary Delphine Lorenzana said the program for the acquisition of multirole fighter or MRF aircraft remains on track as these aircraft are urgently needed in defending the country's airspace. In his speech during the Sanay Datu Air Defense exercise held in Basa Air Base, Florida Blanca, Pampanga on Thursday, he said, quote, "We are pushing for the acquisition of multi-role fighter aircraft as it is a critical capability for the defense of our country's territorial airspace from any form of threat and enforcement of the Philippine Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ. The DND is looking to acquire at least 12 MRF units to beef up the Philippine Air Force's air defense capabilities. Secretary Lorenzana took a selfie while aboard an FA-50PH aircraft, and on his Facebook post, he said, "I witnessed and experienced firsthand the readiness and dedication of the Philippine Air Force to defend our airspace with the platforms they have."
In other news, the police raid in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, left 25 people dead, including one officer. Take a look.
Então, o menino entrou baleado. Como a gente mora na comunidade, a gente não pode botar ninguém para fora, certo? Então, brigamos ele, enrolei uma toalha no pé dele, ele ficou aqui. Quando os polícia pegou, que viu o sangue ali, meteram o pé no portão, saíram entrando, gritando, cadê ele, cadê ele, cadê ele? Ele saiu daqui, correu para ali. Eu só tive tempo de pegar meus filhos e botar para cá, para trás de mim. E eles assassinaram o garoto aí dentro do quarto.
Now, heavily armed suspects leaped from roof to roof to escape the firefight. Police said the operation targeted a gang suspected of recruiting children and teenagers for drug trafficking, robberies, assaults, and murders. They said the sting grew out of a surveillance operation that obtained a warrant to wiretap suspects' communications. At least 10 suspects were arrested.
To Indonesia now, where Mount Sinabung spews hot ash and smoke into the sky. Locals have been advised to stay several kilometers away from the crater. Here's December Paras from our EBC Jakarta Indonesia Bureau with that story. December.
Hi, CJ. Indonesia's Mount Sinabung erupted on Friday, spewing a massive column of smoke and ash up to 2,800 meters into the sky. The volcano in North Sumatra province started belching ash and volcanic material at 9 in the morning, and the eruption lasted almost 6 minutes, according to a local geological agency. No evacuation orders have been issued, and there has been no reported flight disruption. Authorities have instructed residents to avoid a 5-kilometer radius around the crater, a zone that has been left unoccupied for years as volcanic activity increased. Residents and tourists should not do any activity around Mount Sinabung or relocated villages because the volcanic activities remain high. Mohammed Nurul Azori, an official at Mount Sinabung monitoring post, told AFP, adding that the volcano alert status remains unchanged at level 3. Sinabung, a 2,460-meter or 8,070-foot volcano, was dormant for centuries before roaring back to life in 2010 when an eruption killed 2 people. After another period of inactivity, it erupted again in 2013 and has remained highly active since. The following year, an eruption killed at least 16 people, while 7 died in a 2016 blast. Indonesia, an archipelago of more than 17,000 islands and islets, has nearly 130 active volcanoes. Back to you, CJ.
Well, thank you so much, December, for your updates there. Please do take care and tell us more if there are any more developments in this story.
Thank you, CJ. Stay safe too in Manila. Reporting from Jakarta, Indonesia, this is December Paras. We live in interesting times.
Former Maldives President Mohamed Nasheed, the island nation's first democratically elected president, and now its parliamentary speaker, was targeted as he got into his car in an apparent assassination bid. Here's Steffi Dewan from our EBC Maldives Bureau joining us live. Steph? Hello, Steph. Can you hear me? Okay, Steph, can you hear me? Steffi? Okay, are we having a bit of a problem? Can you hear me, Steffi? There you go. Can you turn on your audio, Steffi, please? Okay, I think we're having a technical problem over there. Next, another breaking news today. Prime Minister Boris Johnson's Conservatives scored a stunning election victory in an opposition Labour stronghold today. Aribel Celestino joins us live from the United Kingdom. Aribel.
Hi, Alma, and yes, Prime Minister Boris Johnson's Conservatives scored a stunning election in victory in an opposition stronghold after Britain held its first major ballot box test since Brexit and the coronavirus crisis. Early results from England on Friday showed that the Conservatives had won a landslide in the parliamentary seat at Hartlepool in the northeast, a bitter blow to the opposition Labour Party and its leader Keir Starmer. Hartlepool, a Rust Belt constituency deep in traditional Labour heartlands, which has never voted Conservative since its creation in 1974, saw a 16% swing to the Tories. Her win continues the trend from the last election in December 2019, when Brexit was the dominant issue and the Conservatives grabbed a string of seats across Labour's so-called Red Wall heartlands in northern England. The vote is strongly pro-Brexit. Hartlepool was held alongside local elections across much of the country after the town's Labour incumbent quit over allegations of sexual harassment. Now, with Britain's withdrawal from the European Union complete and the party rebranded, those voters appeared to flock to the Conservatives rather than back to Labour. The result will ratchet up the pressure on Starmer, elected leader a year ago, promising to rebuild the party and reconnect with its traditional voters. The outcome suggests that Johnson continues to enjoy popularity in former Labour strongholds and has benefited from a vaccine bounce, even while Britain has suffered one of the world's worst death toll from COVID-19. Johnson has campaigned for his record as the leader who finally got Brexit done, supported the economy during the pandemic, and rolled out a successful vaccine drive, with early results showing his Conservatives also enjoying success in councils in the Northeast as well as in the Midlands and Southeast. Starmer is facing an increasingly daunting task to unseat him at the next general election due in 2024. The Super Thursday regional and local elections could reshape the UK as pro independence forces in Scotland, where the voting for the devolved parliament was also held, bid to break away. Back to you, Alma.
All right. In a related question, I know that Scotland is also, Scottish independent supporters are calling this election the most important in the nation's history because they vowed that if they win a majority in the devolved parliament, they will push for a referendum on breaking from the United Kingdom. Do you have any developments on this?
Results of voting that took place for the local councils in England, regional mayors, including London, and for the devolved assemblies in Wales and Scotland are expected later Friday and over the weekend. And it is the largest set of elections outside the national election, with adults in England, Scotland, and Wales are all eligible to vote in at least one poll. However, no elections took place in Northern Ireland. And yeah, you're right, Alma. Scotland's election was perhaps the most critical for the UK as a whole, with the prospect of bolstered support in the independence movement. And incumbent First Minister Nicola Sturgeon's Scottish National Party, or SNP, was seeking a renewed mandate that could speed up a second referendum on independence. Scotland's voted 55% to 45% against independence in 2014. Back to you.
All right. Thank you very much for your updates, and you stay safe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Alma. I'm Arabelle Celestino reporting from the United Kingdom, and we live in interesting times.
Meanwhile, London Mayor Sadiq Khan said Tuesday he will try to bring the Olympic and Paralympic Games back to the UK capital if he is re-elected. Here's Kathleen Eusebio for the report. Kathleen?
London Mayor Sadiq Khan said on Tuesday he will try to bring the Olympic and Paralympic Games back to the UK capital if he is re-elected this week. The Labour Party politician said he would establish an exploratory committee for a bid to host the most sustainable ever Games in 2036 or 2040. London would be the first city to host the 4 Summer Games in the modern Olympic era if a bid were successful. Khan, who's 50 years old, is running for a second term in mayoral elections on Thursday and has led the field in polling over his nearest rivals. Khan said exploring a bid for the 2036 or 2040 Olympic and Paralympic Games is the ultimate demonstration of his plan to build a brighter future for London after the pandemic. It would help advance much-needed green infrastructure projects, bringing with them long-term jobs and investment. According to him, his ambition is for London to host the most sustainable games ever, showcasing the Green New Deal for London with investment in low-carbon projects, action to clean up London's air, and showcasing the city's status as the world's first national park city. London last hosted the Olympics and Paralympics in 2012 when current British Prime Minister Boris Johnson was mayor. Khan added using the venues and facilities built for that event would contribute to the sustainability targets of a future bid. The 2012 Games were perceived to have run smoothly because of the efficient infrastructure, logistics, and the punctual completion of new venues, following a 7-year planning period. The Olympic Park site has helped to redevelop the surrounding area of East London, formerly one of the British capital's most deprived neighbourhoods. A 2012 poll for the Games Organising Committee found 65% of respondents thought they improved London and the UK's global image. Khan's 4-year term as a mayor of London was due to expire in 2020, but the arrival of the coronavirus pandemic in the UK forced local elections to be postponed by a year. Khan was elected mayor of London in 2016 and is one of 20 candidates standing in this year's vote. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I'm Kathleen Eusebio. We live in interesting times.
Let's now go to Maldives, where the former President Mohamed Nasheed, the island nation's first democratically elected president, and now its parliamentary speaker, was targeted as he got into his own car in an apparent assassination bid. Here's Steffi Dewan coming back for that report. Hello, Steffi.
Hello, Alma. Good evening.
Good evening.
And yes, former Maldives President and current parliamentary speaker Mohamed Nasheed underwent more surgery Friday following an assassination attempt, but his condition was now described as stable. The first democratically elected leader was seriously injured when a device attached to a motorcycle was detonated as he got into a car in the capital late Thursday. The private ADK hospital said the 53-year-old required further surgery following a thorough assessment of his condition. The hospital did not give further details, but a family member said shrapnel was removed from a lungs and his livers. Officials said the motorcycle with the device attached was parked down the narrow lane leading to Nasheed's home. President Ibrahim Mohamed Soli, a close ally of Nasheed, said an investigation was underway. The Indian Ocean nation of 340,000 Sunni Muslims is best known for its luxury holiday resorts, popular with honeymooners, but it suffers from regular political turmoil. There was no claim of responsibility for Thursday bomb attack, but officials close to Nasheed Maldivian Democratic Party or MDP said they suspected vested political interest opposed to his anti-corruption drive. Nasheed has vowed to investigate a $90 million theft from the state's tourism promotion authority during the tenure of former President Abdullah Yameen. Messages of support for Nasheed poured in on Friday from neighboring India, Pakistan, and Western nations, which have strongly backed his pro-democracy movement and environmental activism. A bit of a background, a pro-democracy fighter, Nasheed currently serves as the country's parliamentary speaker, a position he has held since May 2019. Before that, he became the predominantly Sunni Muslims country's first democratically elected president in 2008, a role he served in until 2012, when he was forced from office in a coup. Nasheed was subsequently put on in trial and sentenced to 13 years in prison on terrorism charges, which were roundly decried by human rights groups as politically motivated. Amnesty International labeled Nasheed as a prisoner of conscience. When Mohamed Nasheed was granted leave from prison for medical treatment, he fled the country and went into exile in the United Kingdom. He returned to the Maldives in 2018 and was elected Speaker of the People's Majlis, the country's second most powerful political position in 2019. And that's my quick update from Maldives. Back to you, Alma.
Thank you very much, Steffi, for your update. Stay safe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Alma, reporting live from Maldives. This is Steffi Juan, and we live in interesting times.
Meanwhile, here in the Philippines, Malacanang announced that all travelers who wish to enter the Philippines, including those who have already been inoculated against COVID-19, are required to undergo a 14-day mandatory quarantine. This developed after the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases approved Thursday the new quarantine and health protocols for all inbound travelers, regardless of their vaccination status. Take a listen.
Sa naaprubahan din kahapon ang protocols para sa lahat ng papasok sa pasahero sa Pilipinas, regardless of their vaccination status in all ports of entry. Ibig sabihin po, maski bakunado na ang mga Pilipino, susunod pa rin po sa bagong protocol. Ano ba ho ang bagong protocol ngayon sa kahit sino na papasok sa Pilipinas? mandatory na po ang 14 days quarantine. Now, pero ang rule po ay absolute facility quarantine ng 10 araw at yung huling 4 na araw ay dapat po home quarantine sa kanilang lugar na pupuntahan at kinakailangan na magkaroon po ng ugnayan sa lokal na pamahalaan para masigurado po yung home quarantine sa natitirang 4 na araw. Bukod pa po rito ay kinakailangan pong magpaswab sa pang-7 araw ng facility quarantine at kinakailangan din po na ipadala sa Genome Center yung mga resulta, yung mga swab na yan para po malaman na kung sila ay positibo, kung anong variant ang meron po sila. Mangunguna po ang Department of Health para sa One Hotel Command. No? Ito po ay para masiguro na meron po tayong sapat na mga kwarto para sa isolation quarantine ng 10 araw kasama ng iba pang mga ahensya, no? Para mapabilis din na masagot ang mga pangangailangan at mga katanungan ng mga nasa facility-based quarantine. Ang DILG naman po sa pamamagitan ng PNP ay tutulong sa Philippine Coast Guard para sa pagbibigay ng seguridad sa quarantine facilities. Makikipag-ugnayan po ang DOH sa OWA, sa DOTR, sa DOT, sa Bureau of Quarantine at sa University of the Philippines National Institute of Health para mas mapaganda ang current symptom tracking mechanisms at makapagbigay ng dagdag ng mga tao para magproseso at mag-asikaso ng symptom tracking information. Kailangan naman pong tiyakin ng DOTR na maisasagawa ang swabbing sa ika-7 araw at ang resulta ng test ay maipadala ng ika-9 na araw. Ang day of release sa quarantine facility ay nasa ika-10 araw po. Samantala, patuloy pa rin ang practice ng double swabbing sa ika-7 araw kung kinakailangan para sa whole genome sequencing.
To operationalize the new rules, the Department of Health, the Bureau of Quarantine, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Foreign Affairs, the Department of Labor and Employment, and the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration are tasked to issue advisories for widest dissemination regarding current testing and quarantine protocols.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. CJ and I will be back right after this break.
This portion is brought to you by Canriv Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Services offered: supply and installation of elevators, escalators, air conditioners, ventilators, jet towel, hand dryers, generators, access control system, factory automation, and modernization. For more info, please contact Ami Kanke at 0915-263-7198 or 0998-900-3224.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, CB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Back here in the country, a total of 1.5 million doses of government-procured Sinovac vaccines from China will augment the country's supply after arriving at the Ninoy Aquino International Airport Terminal 2 via a Cebu Pacific flight today. Department of Health Secretary Francisco Duque III said the delivery will mean 750,000 more individuals will be protected against the coronavirus. National Task Force Against COVID-19 Chief Implementer Secretary Carlito Galvez said more vaccines are arriving in the coming days. including a guaranteed 500,000 more doses of Sinovac. Now, on Saturday, 2 million doses of AstraZeneca vaccines will be delivered from the COVAX facility, while on May 11, Galvez assured the first delivery of U.S.-made Pfizer vaccines, totaling 193,000 doses.
In other news, the push to waive patents on coronavirus vaccines to make them more available globally is accelerating after the United States endorsed the idea yesterday. Russian President Vladimir Putin says he supports the idea of a waiver on patent protections for coronavirus vaccines and urges his government to consider lifting them for Russia's jabs. Take a look.
Вот сейчас мы слышим, в Европе есть идеи, которые, на мой взгляд, заслуживают внимания, а именно снять вообще патентную защиту с вакцин против COVID-19. Безусловно, Россия бы поддержала такой подход, имея в виду, что в современных условиях, как я уже многократно говорил об этом, мы должны думать не о том, чтобы извлекать максимальную прибыль, а о том, чтобы обеспечить безопасность.
Russia has registered 3 coronavirus vaccines and on Thursday approved a fourth, a single-dose version of its Sputnik V jab called Sputnik Light. Moscow has actively pushed Sputnik V, named after the Soviet-era satellite, around the world, with more than 60 countries having approved it for use. The Lancet said it is safe and more than 90% effective.
Meanwhile, German Chancellor Angela Merkel spoke out against the patent waiver, saying the protection is not hindering production of the jabs. Berlin said pharmaceutical companies concerned were already working with partners to ramp up manufacturing capacities. Germany is home to BioNTech, the company which co-developed with Pfizer the first COVID vaccine to be approved for use in the West late last year. Ultimately, it is up to the World Trade Organization and its 164 members to decide. The notion had previously met with fierce opposition from pharmaceutical giants and their host countries, including the U.S. and Switzerland, which had insisted that patents were not the main roadblocks to scaling up production and warned the move could hamper innovation.
Now here in the Philippines, House Majority Leader Martin Romualdez on Friday said waiving intellectual property rights on COVID-19 vaccines is not only morally right, but would ensure people's survival amid the pandemic. Romualdez made the statement as he lauded the Biden administration's support to international efforts suspending intellectual property protection rules for COVID-19 vaccines. He called on Philippine health officials to closely monitor and actively participate in global discussions on the campaign for waiving patent rules for COVID-19 vaccines to ramp up the production of vaccines in the country. Romualdez also emphasized the need to support not just the vaccine patent waiver, but also sufficient funding for researchers, medical experts, and health workers. The World Trade Organization has been facing calls led by India and South Africa to temporarily remove the intellectual property protections on COVID-19 vaccines, a move that was believed to help boost production in developing countries.
And a virus state of emergency in Tokyo and other parts of Japan will be extended less than 3 months before the Olympics. Here's Dennis Liu for the report.
Good evening, Alma and CJ. A virus state of emergency in Tokyo and other parts of Japan was extended on Friday, less than 3 months before the Olympics, with restrictions also imposed in more regions as cases surge. The emergency measures had been due to end on May 11th, but will now continue until the end of the month, according to Prime Minister Suga Yoshihide. Suga said the number of new virus cases is at a high level in major cities, while hospitals continue to be overwhelmed in Osaka and Hyogo prefectures. Osaka Governor Hirofumi Yoshimura has warned the Western region's medical system is reaching breaking point, with reports of COVID-19 patients dying while waiting for an ambulance. Fukuoka and Aichi were added to the 4 regions that have been under emergency measures for a fortnight: Osaka, Hyogo, Kyoto, and the capital Tokyo, where the Olympics are due to open on July 23rd. The state of emergency restricts commercial activity, with bars and restaurants told to shut or stop serving alcohol, and cinemas and karaoke parlors closed. But some rules will soon be eased despite the extension, such as allowing a limited number of fans back into sports stadiums. Japan's COVID-19 outbreak remains much smaller than in many countries, with just over 10,500 deaths. But its vaccine rollout is moving slowly, and some areas have seen record cases as more infectious variants drive fresh waves of contagion. More than 10,000 athletes from 200 countries and regions are due to take part in the pandemic-postponed 2020 Olympics. Games President Seiko Hashimoto said Friday the organizing committee would welcome a visit by IOC President Thomas Bach this month, but that it would be very difficult to arrange given the prolonged state of emergency. Japan's government and Games organizers insist the event will go ahead safely. Although polls show most Japanese people support cancellation or another delay. More than 210,000 people have signed an online petition titled "Cancel the Tokyo Olympics to Protect Our Lives," launched Wednesday by a lawyer and former Tokyo gubernatorial candidate. The pandemic has disrupted Olympic test events, with several postponed, canceled, or moved abroad. Olympics organizers are yet to decide how many fans, if any, will be allowed at the Games, with overseas spectators already barred from attending. This is the latest for now. Reporting from Tokyo, Japan, this is Dennis Lu. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Dennis. In India, the COVID emergency is growing ever more desperate. India logged yet another record number of infections. New infections have topped 400,000 for a second time, with nearly 4,000 deaths in 24 hours. The capital, New Delhi, is one of the worst hit, along with West Bengal in the east, which recently completed an 8-phase election that saw mass rallies by Prime Minister Narendra Modi and other politicians, events now partly blamed for the staggering rise in infections. Hospitals in New Delhi are in crisis. India's surge has also been worsened by chronic shortages of hospital beds and oxygen, prompting an outpouring of international aid to the country. Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal has indicated, however, that the crisis in the capital had eased slightly.
Now let's meet this COVID hero in India. This auto rickshaw driver named Javed Khan in Bhopal has converted his vehicle into an ambulance complete with oxygen, and he serves people for free. Take a look.
एम्बुलेंस ऑटो बनाया है। मैंने ये देखा भोपाल के अंदर और बाकी जगहों पे देखा, कोई अपने माँ को, कोई अपने बाप को कंधे पे लेके जा रहा है, कोई गोद में लेके जा रहा है, कोई सिलेंडर उठा के साथ में लेके जा रहा है, कोई बेचारा एक नौजवान तड़प रहा है, उसको ऑक्सीजन नहीं मिल रहा। एम्बुलेंस वालों को फ़ोन लगा रहा है, एम्बुलेंस वाले आ नहीं रहे, आ रहे हैं तो वो 5-6 किलोमीटर के 10,000 5,000 ऐसे पैसा मांग रहे हैं। गरीब इंसान कहाँ से दे? इस महामारी के अंदर गरीब इंसान के पास इनकम तो कहीं से आ नहीं रही, तो कहाँ से दे? तो हमने अपनी बीवी का एक लॉकेट था वो बेच के हमने ये पूरा बंदोबस्त करा। ये भारती जैन मैडम है, उन्होंने सिलेंडर दिया। नरेश जी हैं, उन्होंने इसके अंदर मीटर लगवाया और बाकी मैं चलाता रहता हूँ। और बहुत से लोग हमारी हेल्प कर रहा है, मदद कर रहा है। कोई फ़ोन पे हमें पैसा डाल रहा है, कोई लोग कह रहे हैं कि आप इसको कंटिन्यू चलाते रहिए, अब तक ये महामारी से हम मुक्त नहीं हो जाते। तो ये सबकी मदद से संभव हो पाया, मैं अकेला कुछ नहीं कर पाता था।
In other news, Dr. Anthony Fauci, White House chief medical advisor on COVID-19, said that people who have had COVID-19 and later got vaccinated may have more protection against highly contagious variants. He said people who have had prior infections saw their immune response to COVID-19 drastically improve after receiving mRNA vaccines. According to data, the vaccines bump up any natural protection people may have had from prior infection substantially. Watch this.
We know that reinfections with a homologous strain, namely the same strain as initial infection, remain rare. They occur, but they're rare. Vaccination in people previously infected significantly boosts the immune response, and likely, as I'm going to show you in a moment, providing better protection against certain variants. And then the issue of vaccines actually, at least with regard to SARS-CoV-2, can do better than nature. Next slide. If you take a look now at what happens if you have prior infection and then you get vaccinated. And in this study, again, from about a week or so ago, after one dose of the Pfizer mRNA, people who had been previously infected actually showed enhanced both T-cell immunity as well as neutralizing antibodies, not only against the wild type, but interesting, as I alluded to several sessions ago, you even get some spillover of infection against variants. If you look at this slide, again, antibody response from people who were previously infected and then boosted with 2 doses of an mRNA, you had interesting increased protection against the variants of concern. So if you look at the panels on the right-hand part of the slide, the 4 panels are response against 4 different viruses, some wild type, some variants. If you look at the orange, those are individuals with no history of prior infection who were then vaccinated. Take a look at the blue dots, always significantly higher than the orange dots. And those are people who were previously infected, recovered, and then at some time later got vaccinated. You can see they're protected not only against the wild type, but against the 351 from South Africa and the P1. Now remember, these are only laboratory data, have not been proven in the clinic, but they are really very interesting and things that we need to follow up on. Next.
The final study Fauci cited suggested that people who have recovered from a prior COVID-19 infection who then get vaccinated may also receive great broadband protection against other coronaviruses like SARS from their COVID-19 vaccination.
To other news now, 15 Palestinians were arrested in Israel-annexed East Jerusalem overnight in clashes with police over an eviction threat against 4 Palestinian families. The second straight night of rioting in the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood was fueled by a years-long land dispute between Palestinian refugees and Jewish settlers in the strategic district near Jerusalem's Old City. Now, the violence comes as Muslims prepare to mark the last Friday of the fasting month of Ramadan, with tens of thousands of Palestinian worshippers set together at the sacred Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. Tensions have been fueled by a long-running legal case over the homes of 4 Palestinian families on land claimed by Jews, which is due to go before the Supreme Court on Monday. Earlier this year, a Jerusalem district court ruled the homes legally belong to the Jewish families, citing purchases made when the whole of historic Palestine, including what is now Israel, was under British rule. The Jewish plaintiffs claim their families lost the land during the war that accompanied Israel's creation in 1948, a conflict that also saw hundreds of thousands of Palestinians displaced from their homes. Israeli law allows Jews who can prove pre-1948 title to recover their properties. It doesn't afford the same right to Palestinians. The Sheikh Jarrah families have provided evidence that their homes were acquired from Jordanian authorities who controlled East Jerusalem from 1948 to 67. Arman has intervened in the case, providing documents to support the Palestinian claims Israel seized East Jerusalem in 1967 and later annexed it in a move not recognized by most of the international community.
Meanwhile, China said Friday the risk of damage from a rocket falling back to Earth was extremely low after the United States warned it could crash down onto an inhabited area. Military experts in the U.S. expect the body of the Long March 5B rocket, which separated from Beijing space station, to come down sometime around Saturday or Sunday, but warned it was difficult to predict where it will land and when. But Beijing downplayed the risk of danger. The probability of causing harm to aviation activities or on people and activities on the ground is extremely low, that according to Foreign Ministry spokesman Wang Wenbin. Most of the rocket components would likely be destroyed upon re-entry into the atmosphere, he added, saying authorities will inform the public of the situation in a timely manner.
The Philippine Stock Exchange Index sustained its slide on Friday, partly on the increases in the jobs in the U.S. last April, but the peso strengthened further against the U.S. dollar. The main equities index further fell by 0.38% or 24.07 points to 6,258.71 points. All shares lost 0.06% or 2.22 points to 3,877.043 points. Half of the sectoral indexes gained during the day, namely the mining and oil, 1.45%, services, 1.33%, and industrial, 0.21%. Volume totaled 2.10 billion shares, amounting to 4.66 billion pesos.
The head of tobacco giant Philip Morris said the company will phase out conventional cigarettes in Japan within 10 years in an interview with the Nikkei Business Daily published Friday. The Marlboro maker announced in 2016 a long-term goal to stop selling cigarettes and replace them with alternatives that it says are less harmful, but this is the first time it has given a clear deadline. Newly appointed CEO Jacek Olczak told the Nikkei in an interview published in Japanese that the company will realize a smoke-free society in Japan within 10 years. Philip Morris International is betting on its IQOS, a sort of short cigarette inserted into a device that heats the tobacco and releases a vapor. Olczak told the Nikkei they plan to introduce devices using new technologies. Under a law that came into effect in 2020, lighting up regular cigarettes is banned in most restaurants in Japan, while heated products are allowed while eating and drinking when certain conditions are met. Japan's government earns billions of dollars annually in cigarette tax revenue and owns a one-third stake in Japan Tobacco, the world's third largest tobacco company.
And finally, in our news, Floyd Mayweather is involved in a chaotic brawl during the build-up to next month's fight with internet star Logan Paul as tempers boiled over at a photo opportunity in Miami. Take a look.
Let's make it happen. Yes, sir. Get the big one for this ball. Absolutely. Don't need out. I'm my own boss. I'm my own boss. Night. Got your hat.
Go.
Actually, there's a TikTok entry by Paul Jake that where he said he's gonna take his cap, and this was before before he actually did it. So it's a game for him. It's a play for him.
Yeah.
Well,
Anyways.
that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. The news returns tomorrow at 8 p.m. or 11 p.m. here in the Philippines. So please join us again. I'm CJ Hero.
Thank you for reminding them, CJ. And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. We'll see you back tomorrow at 11 p.m. I'm Alma Angeles, and
we live in interesting times.